Well, COVID-19 has brought with it many emotions. There's fear and frustration, anxiety, sadness, and despair, just to name a few. Some of us are finding it hard to stay hopeful as the second wave takes hold. But award-winning Toronto poet Margot van Sluytman wants to change that. Her new book of poetry is called Hope Is, the Pandemic Poems, and each of her poems is followed by a question for the reader. Margot, good morning.
Good morning, Jill.
What inspired you to start composing and writing these poems about hope?
I was inspired, Jill, because when in March, when the whole deep concern started to occur, I was nervous and I said to myself, well, Miss Margot, how are you going to navigate this time of deep change? And part of my answer came from Reverend Ann Hines at Roncesvalles United Church and invited me to write a poem for Easter. And I thought, Easter, that's a compelling time where life and death dance, spring. And then my answer was confirmed when a friend of mine lay dying in a hospital bed in March from COVID-19, being in an induced coma. And I thought, all right, now the ante has been upped. What are you going to do? And I thought, life and death as a dance, grab your pen and write.
And hope seems to be it's at the center of these poems. How important is that role of hope during this pandemic?
I think it is very important during the pandemic. I think it is something that when we get scared, all of us, we get scared, we get nervous, we feel threatened. We can easily forget that hope is part of us. Resilience is part of us. Adaptability is part of us. So hope, it's important to remember that four-letter word, HOPE. We are it, and it is still of us. The pandemic is not going to eradicate it.
It's just so interesting that you say that it's part of us, because I think for some people, they think it isn't there for them, that it's something, that it's a learned behavior, that it's not part of their DNA.
I believe that it is part of us. Every morning we wake up prior to the pandemic, life is complex, life is challenging. Every day we know what the end game is. We are going to meet our maker, if you will, and we deal and we struggle with so many, many things. And every single day we wake up and we do our best. And this is not about perfection, and this is not about winning some race or some lottery. Hope says, look, you have some gifts, you have some opportunity, there is a bit of possibility, there is community. I mean, for me, Roncesvalles United Church is a rich and generous community, and that gives hope. And it is part of us. We remind each other, you see, and that is what the pandemic poems, Hope is about. It's a reminder.
You have a poem from your collection called Out of the Abyss. Could you read that for us now?
Yes, with pleasure, Jill. Thank you. Out of the abyss. We set sail on this voyage, betimes tasting bitter bile that rises in our souls, for melancholy sidles in beside us. Weary, worn and weathered, we forget our might and our mettle. One soft breeze flows forth, all begins to form as if anew, a genesis of plenty. Out of the abyss, heart's script, a revived doctrine. What was once invisible, now we see, and fertile purpose swells each new dawning day.
What was behind that poem, Margot?
What was behind the poem was the essence of being on journey, being on a voyage, and a voyage that is a paradoxical voyage wherein we cry when we are happy, we cry when we are sad. it is a dance of many, many, many emotions. And I thought, all right, I use the word Genesis in there, and that is beginning. And I thought, we're at the beginning, this pandemic. It's the beginning of something that is worrying and challenging. It is also at the beginning, there is possibility. On voyage, there is possibility. And I connected to the sales from this book are for Theodore's Place Healing Home for Crime Survivors and for the meal program at Roncesvalles United Church. So crime survivors, that implies death, murder, grief, anguish, all right, because those things are true. Mm-hmm. The meal program, of course, then we are speaking of people that do not have food, all right? We are talking about those painful, deeply, deeply harrowing things. At the very same time, from those deep abyss, we are talking about hope. We are talking about possibility. We are talking about creativity. When I talk about New Dawning Day, nature is for me a deep ally. That is part of how this this poem speaks and what it offers.
What is the therapeutic value of poetry, particularly at this time?
Oh, my word, Jill. It is huge. It's huge. Firstly, the word therapy can be a bit off-putting. However, there are other words, expressive writing. So just a tiny bit of context. I've written books, journals and poetry books about and for expressive and therapeutic writing because I practiced it myself. I've done it since I was very, very young. The therapeutic value and the healing value is being in relationship with. So, for each poem, for example, Out of the Abyss, the essential question is, when fear grabs you, how can words assist you? It assists you because you get to cry on the page, you get to dance on the page, you get to ask questions on the page. You're in relationship with yourself, and in so doing, it informs the relationships that you can have during the day. And as I said, this is not about, it's okay, we'll be groovy. No, This is very complex time. And to be able to write about that with and for and because of yourself, a self that is always within relationship, always within community, it offers expression and validation, and it elucidates possibility as well as acknowledging the fears. It is a dance, you see, and that is how it proves to be therapeutic and healing and helpful.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your expressions of hope with us this morning, Margot. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you very much, Jill.
Margot Van Sluytman is the author of Hope Is, the Pandemic Poems. The collection is available through the Roncesvalles United Church.